6 o'clock, and I'm calling to order the work session. There is a quorum, even though Councilman Carl Munger will be a few minutes late. So purpose of this work session is to the discussion of recommended updates to the Town of Trophy Club financial reserves policy. And we will hear from April, and we will also open it up for discussion as we go forward. Thank you, April.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As mentioned at the March 25th Town Council meeting, Mr. Wright and I have been working on a financial reserves policy. Tonight's workshop is to open up a discussion about the policy we have come up with and get the council's feedback. I trust most of you have had an opportunity to review the full policy that was included in your agenda packet, so I'm just going to touch on the major changes. The current version of this policy is from 2011 and only addresses the general fund reserves. The proposed policy presented tonight expands this to include all town funds and will be administered by the finance director on behalf of the town manager. The 2011 version sets the general fund reserves target at 30%, while this updated policy changes this requirement to a minimum of 30% and a maximum of 50%, with the target being 45%. The proposed policy also addresses a reserves utilization plan and structures those items in order of priority. Those items could include one-time transfers to other funds, additional funding for capital projects in the capital improvement plan, one-time capital project expenditures approved by council, could include to lower the amount of future bond issuances, as well as startup expenditures for new programs approved by council. Can also fund accrued liabilities for items such as debt service, pension, and other employment benefits, or could be assigned at the recommendation of the town manager with council approval. If reserves fall below the 30% minimum, the proposed policy implements a replenishment plan that includes the town manager providing council with updates and options to replenish the reserve funds. This plan would be presented by June 1st of each year that the shortfall occurs. Typical sources used for replenishment are non-recurring revenues, budget surpluses, year-end surpluses, or excess revenues in other funds. Why are reserves necessary? Reserves are critical for emergency preparedness, fiscal stability, credit worthiness, flexibility and opportunity, stabilizing budgetary cycles, and building public confidence. Liquidity in town funds is also a vital part of this. Liquidity ensures financial stability and flexibility. Liquidity is a measure of how quickly you are able to meet immediate obligations. Something like cash is very liquid, as it may be spent quickly. Something like a road asset is not liquid because it cannot be used to meet immediate financial obligations. Maintaining effective liquidity allows the town to swiftly respond to emergencies, meet short-term obligations, and seize opportunities without disruption. As mentioned earlier, the proposed policy addresses reserve funds in the governmental funds as a whole, as well as our business type funds. Governmental funds are an accounting term used to describe funds that are primarily supported by tax dollars. For the town, some of the governmental funds are the general fund, the Crime Control Prevention District Fund, Street Maintenance Sales Tax Fund, Hotel Occupancy Fund. All of those are some of the examples of governmental funds for the town. When combined together, the draft policy requires that current assets exceed current liabilities and that unrestricted cash and short-term investments are at least 100% of current liabilities. These are all numbers that can easily be found in the town's annual comprehensive financial report. Another group of funds that are important to monitor for liquidity purposes are those known as business-type funds. These funds are primarily supported by user fees such as Trophy Club Park and the Storm Drainage Utility Fund. The target for business-type funds collectively reported are that current assets must be at least 75% of current liabilities and that cash and short-term investments must be at least 50% of current liabilities. Here's a look at how our different fund types look as reported in our most recent annual comprehensive financial report for the year end September 30th, 2023. General fund balance is $9.9 million, which equates to 72% of operating expenses. The governmental funds collectively have current assets of $51.2 million against current liabilities of $4.8 million. The governmental funds collectively have cash and cash equivalents of $32.7 million and $4.8 million in current liabilities. The town's business-type funds have current assets of $2 million against current liabilities of $224,000. The town's business-type funds also have $2 million in cash and cash equivalents compared to $224,000 in current liabilities. When compared to this policy, the current financial statements would make the following determinations. General fund unassigned reserves exceed the maximum reserve level by approximately $3 million. Liquidity in the governmental funds exceeds the minimum level established in the policy, and liquidity in the business-type funds exceeds the minimum level established in the policy as well. Based on tonight's discussion and recommendations, we anticipate a final draft of the proposed policy being presented at the April 22nd council meeting. At this time, I'd like to open it up for discussion or answer any questions that you may have.
Steve?
Could you go back to the slide that speaks to the priorities, the 1 through 7 priorities?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That one?
Yes. And you and I had a discussion about this, April, but I want to bring it up here again.
Absolutely.
Walk us through how these were established. And specifically, I want to get to, I don't see here anywhere where one of our options would be to lower taxes specifically. And that has to do with the the voter approval rate.
Yes,
right?
sir.
So I want to speak to that specifically.
So that would come into play during the budget process. This policy will not address lowering taxes or any of those types of things. That would all come later as part of the budget discussion and what the desire of council would be at that time.
And then, okay, let me follow up. I'm sorry, Dennis. I'm a little confused. When you and I talked, I thought you said that we as a council decided not to do that.
Right.
That was during the budget process, you're saying?
Right, so at the retreat, the discussion that came from that was that council wanted to be at the voter approval rate to prepare for any emergencies or anything else that may occur. When we get into the budget process, that's where we will bring to you what the proposed tax rate would be. And at that time, we'll discuss the voter approval rate and all the different rates. And that's when the discussion would come in that we would lower that if that was the desire of council.
But shouldn't that still be here as an option? I mean, I guess I'm confused as to why.
So it gets into, your question's a good one, right? The general question is, how do you safely lower taxes or use fund balance to lower taxes, right? So if you go back to these excess reserves utilization plan concepts here, right, there are 7 priorities for it, right? Notice that none of them are fund your ongoing operational costs from fund balance. Why wouldn't you do that? right? Well, that's because then you get yourself into a financial problem within a couple of years, right? That would be the downside of making a decision like that. However, if you take a look here, you'll see that, let's see, so items on this list, right? The second one down, the third one down, the fourth one down. Let's talk about the fourth one down because that one's an easy one, right? Appropriated to lower the total amounts of a future bond issuance. Now, you can very much use your current cash on hand and then reduce your obligation for bonds in the future to pay for a project. By not borrowing money, right, that in effect lowers your INS tax rate, the rate that you would have for your borrowing funds for capital projects. So that is how you would get at a strategy to be able to use to get to ways that you would be able to lower tax rate if you wanted to, by way of using the excess funds in a prioritized way.
Yes.
I agree with Steve. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am.
Dennis, you would like to
Okay.
speak?
Steve's right, but if I'm trying to keep track of all your stuff at the same time, all my stuff.
Absolutely.
If I didn't see that correctly, you were talking about implementing these in June. If you go back to one of your, where we were talking about this would be in the middle of the year, no later than June 1st, okay, redistribute the replenishment plan to town council. This is what I was picking up.
Sure.
And that's not the right time to talk about a tax rate. But it is, not that it's not a good reason for, but if this goes on during the year, not just in September, because that's when we talk about tax rate. Am I correct in my thinking?
Well, we start those discussions in May, June. We get a picture of what it looks like. We just don't have certified numbers until later in the year.
No, I know that, but as far as reassigning or reallocating an overage, that could be any time of the year.
Yes.
That's what I was getting to.
Yes, sir. This June 1st date is for if it falls below the 30% threshold.
No, I'm sorry, I'm trying to make notes as you go through this.
No, you're
I picked
good.
up June. But the idea is this replenishment and these options could be any time of the year when it exceeded the budget. And you don't want to be talking about tax rate in June or April because it's effectively September, that's the official date, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I agree with them that that's an absolute reason to lower the tax rate is to have that.
Yeah, I wasn't
But not
talking
if
about
you're-
replenishment plan. That's a different discussion.
Okay.
Totally, yeah.
Well, but the idea of what you can use how you could use that overage is what we're talking about.
Correct, yeah, and the overage, that part would happen probably right around this time of year is when you'd be having conversations about what to do with excess funds, if you had excess funds by way of the policy, right? Because you don't want to make that decision until you've closed the books and completed the audit for the year. Once the audit's complete, and you remember, was it our last meeting? I think it was the one that we actually had presented audit. After that presented audit is the opportunity to then talk about, okay, based on the policy, here's where we are, and here's where we would begin moving forward with either spending of excess funds, just saying we're good where we are and we don't need to do anything more, or we are falling below the number and now it's time for us to get a replenishment plan in place to be able to have that in consideration for the next upcoming budget cycle.
Or add an option to delay doing anything until the tax rate is discussed.
I'm not following that.
No.
All right? In other words, if you have an overage,
Yep,
right? $1 million, whatever. And you're figuring out whether or not how you want to spend that overage. You want to pay off a bond, you want to approve a CIP. One of the options you could have would be to leave it where it's at until the tax rate is set. In other words, instead of spending it, okay, put it forward to be determined and that really just says determined in September.
Yeah, nothing says you have to spend that money now.
And it doesn't,
Right,
and
it
once
just
again,
says
it's
make
only
the plan.
one of many options, but it does let people know, but I think, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but the idea being is this money could be spent to lower the tax rate.
well, I mean, if you go back to the first slide, the slide that shows we're at 72%. So as we sit here today, right, we know that we have 72% in current reserves, which is well above what we're saying should be our max and minimum and target at 45%. Right?
Yes.
I'm just trying to, in my mind and in other people's minds, understand when we get into, is it in the budgeting process that we will look at that number and say, as a budget subcommittee or the whole council, hey, we got a lot of money in reserves. Is that what we want? Is that what we need to be doing? Are we comfortable with that? Are we not? Do we need to reallocate that in some way, fashion, or form? One of which could be the lower taxes? Maybe not. I just want to make sure we all understand, because when somebody sees that number, they might say, holy moly, that's a lot of money. I'm paying a lot of money in taxes. What's the correlation here?
But my understanding is this could be discussed and managed anytime during the year if you found it to be appropriate to bring it, say, we're looking at some allocation of money to the parks or something, and we need money for that. Oh, look at this. Is this an opportunity that we want to move that money to the parks?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's fluid all year long. It gives us some, sounds to me like some flexibility in using our funds.
Well, you'd also
That's
want
the
to
bottom
look
line.
at the upcoming economic cycle.
Correct.
And perhaps maintain a higher level of
That's right.
balance.
Correct.
And then I had one other question regarding the excessive reserves utilization plan. It's my understanding that they're stated like this, but it's not by priority. So in other words, if money came and we wanted to talk about it, we could move through it according to where the need is, these are not prioritized. Is that true?
They are prioritized,
Okay.
but that does not mean that that's the way we feel they should be prioritized. But
Okay.
council can come in and reprioritize.
Yeah, it does not mean that you're bound to do something in category 1 before you move to 2,
Thank you.
right? It just
Thank you.
says, here's the things to consider. Here might be more important things. Here might be less important things, right? But
Okay.
kind of move your way through that. And as you look at that, kind of that's what it does, right? You know, so that first one-time transfer to other funds. If you had a fund that was performing, that was negative on cash, for example, right? It's important financially to take care of the housekeeping, right? Make sure that you've covered your negative funds and make sure that those are in a positive territory, okay? Then you go on to the other ones. If I have a current project that's short on money, right, it's cost overruns or whatever that might be, that's more of an immediate need. The next one would be kind of finding a project, moving it forward. Next one would be kind of looking to the future and saying we want to, and in the future, we want to borrow less money on that. So you're doing proximity, right? And you're kind of moving your way out from proximity into the future.
But we also have to be really careful that that's not a safety net to move funds. I agree with you, Brandon, that if something comes up and we need to, fund that, cost overrun, whatever it is, we should look at the policy. Why did it happen? Why was there an overrun? What was the shortfall? I just want to be careful that we just don't automatically have these funds and say, we're short over here, let's just move it.
Yeah.
You can get into a dangerous slope there.
Absolutely.
I don't think it would be a surprise. We would be.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. We would be managing the budget.
I have a comment or two. I think that we're in alignment because I'm hearing the same questions that I had written down. But I think as an overview, this adjustment, this policy has needed to be revamped in like the last 10 years, that we've slowly accumulated reserves which don't enhance our Dun & Bradstreet rating or what we need so that we can borrow money more easily and at a lower rate. What we need to do is get this balanced out. So I understand this needs to be done, and I've been a proponent for it. I think we've brought it up the last year or two when we've discussed budget. But the language will require flexibility in the allocation. And I really am going to have to be emphatic about that because we don't want to say, oh, put it in capital improvements. And we don't want to just have, these are the 5, and administration says, well, let's move this money and then let's go to council and see if we get it approved. one thing that we ran into trouble with last year was the air conditioning systems in the police department and here. And when we ask, where is the maintenance line item in the budget, there wasn't one. Are we now saying, I noticed it in our proposed policy reserves, that we have indicated an IS capital equipment replacement? What is that? That's under your policy reserves. If you can look at that under general fund, it shows 30 to 50.
Yes.
And then in government funds, we've shown IS capital equipment replacement. What is
Oh,
that?
okay, so that's information services, that's our IT budget, and capital replacement is its own fund for that.
So they have their own fund, but what do we have for major maintenance items within our buildings and our facilities?
So we have
That
capital.
fall under government funds?
It does, it's a capital replacement fund, but it's not maintenance,
Not
it's just
maintenance.
replacement, right? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, we kind of ran into a problem of not knowing where to get the money last year
Yes.
when that happened. How did we resolve that? Did we open up a new ledger account? What did we do?
I'll have to look at facilities and see where that's accounted for in there, but there should be funds allocated in there for routine
Right,
maintenance.
I just wanted to make sure if we're getting through all these other
Yes, ma'am.
capital, that we have that maintenance fund so that we're not scrambling
Absolutely.
and then grabbing from reserves for something that should have already had a line item budgeted for it.
Yes, ma'am.
Not being critical.
No,
just
you're great.
remembering
No,
what we went
I love
through
it.
last year. Really, this adjustment, as I said, needs to be done, but when we get to looking to the drafting of the ordinance, I would want to make sure that we have got the flexibility in it, because I heard it isn't prioritized, it is prioritized.
No.
Now, I'm talking to Brandon.
Yeah.
Because you used the words, it is prioritized, but that's not inflexible. Is that correct?
Correct. And really, we are looking here for council feedback on this topic as well. Right now, it is presented as a prioritized list. In other words, it's saying, these are the more immediate things to consider, and these are the things that might be a little bit further down on that list. Okay. What that does is it helps staff know on our side, right? We're ultimately, in the practical use of this policy, what will happen is after the close of each fiscal year, if there are excess reserves, we will get together as staff, right? We'll have, and we'll, have thought about the input that council's provided over the year or years about things that we need to be making spending money on. We'll develop a list and we'll kind of run down these items. We'll develop items that can be considered from that. And then we'll give that list to the council to say, here are the items that we've come up with. We'd like to see what ideas you have, if you have any in addition to these. But ultimately, then we'll leave it up to the council to debate and ultimately decide how to spend that money effectively for it. So that's in the practical part of it, that's how it would work. But the prioritization helps us and helps you to have that conversation in a way that kind of says, okay, this might be a lower priority, this one might be a higher priority for it when you have to balance all things at one time. Or that if it's helpful for you to have that, we can include that prioritization in the way that we come up with that list. If it's not, it can just be, here are the list of items that we can be on this list, and we're just kind of giving that list without the prioritization part of it. It can be done either way. There's not a right or a wrong way to do this. I think it might be helpful to have a prioritized list so that you're kind of deciding which things are more, what things might be top of the list if you're going to be choosing between multiple items.
Thank you.
I just have a question because, again, we know that this new policy adds to it the government and business type funds liquidity policy. This is just a question. Why would that not have been on the first policy statement, would you think? I mean, I know that.
Yeah, if I had to guess,
Okay.
There's, in government, everyone here has heard of unassigned fund balance in the general fund and watching that number very carefully, right? That's what bond rating agencies look at. That's what the number you're kind of, judged by as far as how you're doing. So it's not uncommon for the policies to focus only on that number. The downfall to that is that you are more than a general fund, right? You have many other funds that have to perform well together in order to make sure that overall the finances stay in check. And so why it wasn't done in the past? Well, it's because people overly rely on the unassigned fund balance in the general fund as the measure of success of a government. However, doing that only leads you to ignore all of your other funds, and there are dozens of them. And together, it's not a small amount of money. And so you want to make sure that the overall financial health of the town is in good condition, not just the general fund.
If you could, Brandon or April, percentage-wise, give us numbers, percentages. General fund would make up X percent of the whole budget here. Government funds would be X, business funds would be X. I'm not looking for an exact number. I mean, is business funds 10%? Is government funds 15% and the rest? I'm trying to gauge what Brandon just said about the size of the buckets.
So general fund is a governmental fund. And so governmental funds, I would say, make up 90%, 95%.
Probably the governmental ones.
Right.
But think about it like this, right? Take a look at your governmental funds up there, where it has actually go to the next slide, please. Yeah. Take a look at what your general fund unassigned fund balance is $9.9 million, right? But if I take a look at our cash and cash equivalents across all of our governmental funds, that number is closer to $33 million. Okay, so 3 times the number of liquid assets that you have across governmental funds are happening outside of your general fund. Might be capital projects. In fact, it is, and a lot of it in this category is actually the capital projects. It's your PID fund that has to perform adequately, right? On that part of it, your debt service fund that's used to pay all the debt that the town has. All of those are very important funds. Taking your eye off them by way of the policy just kind of leads you to believe that the general fund is the only fund that matters. Okay.
All right, jumping ahead or switching subjects, so that was the word. If I look at this, right, the general fund, you got 72% of excess right now. But when you go to your government funds, you've got assets of 51 million and you're only liable for a little under 5 million. Now, in government funds, that could be committed to future years, meaning it's not all spent in 1 year. But for clarity, your 4.8 million is this year, not the total. So it's not, it could be misinterpreted to say, gosh, you got how much, you got millions and millions of dollars, but that is thought of in the future for commitment. That's not excess. So if I use the right words.
Nope, you are correct, right? So as you take a look at, for example, your capital improvement fund, all of that funding is there to spend on projects, right? You might have a bucket of money there. It's all very liquid asset, right? It's a very current asset that you have there in cash, but the plan is to spend it on projects. Okay, so you're going to need it as you get into a time when you're going to be doing more projects. You be building up that reserve, right? That level of fund balance there, so that you can spend it on projects here soon.
Okay, so it's futuristic versus this 9.9 million, which is of the unassigned funds, which is more current. Okay. We keep talking about the general fund and we keep talking about the unassigned fund, and you and I have had this conversation. And there's a reason why these targets, and I'm using the word target percentages, are at the unassigned fund rather than just the general fund. Could you just take a second and explain that one?
You got it? So you have your general fund, right? Your general fund is the fund that we spend all of our main operating costs out of. Okay, so if we think about our streets and parks and police and fire and all those different things are all paid out of the general fund. Okay. At the end of the year, but your general fund will also have some other things in it, right? So it'll have some grant funds, for example, if we receive some grant funds that are paying for something, right? That's a restricted source of money. I can't just use it generally for that. And so it's important. So the unassigned fund balance is a way of categorizing what leftover money in the general fund is free and clear to use on any purpose, right? That's what that purpose is of the unassigned fund balance. So it's a subset of your leftover general fund money. Now, it also is the largest one in the general fund, right? Because of the fact that you don't usually have these other restricted sources in the general fund to large degrees. So a lot of your general fund leftover money is in there. However, as you know, for your other funds, your debt service fund, for example, right? So all of the money that's collected in the debt service fund is restricted to repaying debt. So it's restricted to debt repayment. So although it's a balance, it can only be used one way. Same thing, capital projects, right? It has to be used on projects. It's not free and clear.
Thank you.
So just to follow, on the 9.9 million, what percentage of that is unassigned?
All 9.9.
All 9%?
That is the
all the other
unassigned.
stuff? Okay, that's what I got.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah, so if I go to the.
I wish you would have
identified
identified it as, rather than a general fund, I wish you would have identified it as the
Unassigned.
unassigned fund on that, right?
Oh, okay.
And I want to, I got more questions, but I don't want to jump ahead. My questions are on the policy. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve, please.
I agree with you that
Yeah.
just identifying
Right.
that's unassigned
It was hard
is
to
helpful.
find.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. And
Too bad we don't have that little bell that we can ring to get our turn in.
Would you like a turn?
I would.
Ding, 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 ding.
First off, I apologize for being late. I had a client and they didn't get done until almost 6 o'clock. So that's why I was late. Maybe you showed this at the beginning before I got here. Do you have a time chart that shows when the excess landed in the account? Like a year ago, we weren't at 72%, right? A year ago,
Right.
we were how much?
I believe it was 54.
And a year
last
before that,
year.
we were how much?
I don't have that number.
So over the last years, when we've
just
had the
continues
largest
to
jump,
grow.
right?
Right.
And part of that is because our investments did really, really good.
They did
right? I
really
mean, that
well.
doesn't happen all the time. So
Right.
this is not like, oh, we way over budgeted. This is
Right.
like, well, our investments did really, really well. So next year, our investments might do really, really crappy. So we want to be really careful to think all of a sudden we got all this extra money out there that is always going to be there, right? Not necessarily the case. Ever since I got on council, I have beat the drum for holding down the excess amount, right? That whether we cut taxes or whatever that is, we need to do. But the big issue that you have to wrestle with is the uncertainty of what's going to happen with property tax valuations, right? And Brandon and I talked about the other day about running a spreadsheet out into the future, right? We know that our budget, the amount of property tax we have coming in is pretty much locked in. You can lock it in a box, right? And you can project percents every year it's going to grow. Our town budget is kind of locked in a box. So you can project percents it's going to grow. And if you run those two numbers, they should kind of all track the same with the excess being that little part above it. And if you get to the point where they go crosswise, then you know you got a problem. But if you run that out 5 years or 10 years, right? I mean, we've talked about the impact of pay raises for law enforcement. We have hired extra firefighters. What's going to happen 5 years from now? And so my concern is, first off, that's way too much. 72% is way too much. But before we go jumping in and throw everything in the mix, let's run some good numbers and see what it is. Also, I think Luann had mentioned earlier, ordinance is a policy, right? So there's a difference between a policy and an ordinance. This is not an ordinance, this is a policy.
Policy.
Right, okay.
Good.
That's it.
And I don't know, when you said 72%, so the idea is to keep it at a target of 45%.
Yeah, I think mandate's 30.
Now it is currently. And he's
Correct.
30 to 50, but 45 is the target. Yes, ma'am.
Going along with what Carl said, it was my understanding that a lot of the excess is because when we budget for full employment.
We do.
And we haven't had full employment. We've always been out trying to hire people. So therefore, that money goes to this excess. But at the same time, it would not be a prudent thing to budget for less than full employment. And I totally agree with Carl. We've had this conversation for no matter which terminology we've used for that. The answer, Luann's question, last year, replacing the ACs in this place were in the capital improvement. And we said, no, it needs to be in the maintenance, in the annual type thing, unless there was a specific reason to put it in capital improvement. So that's what we were going to, and you were going to adjust, and I'm talking to Brandon really because he wasn't here at that conversation, but the maintenance of this building was going to be adjusted to be realistic, not because the money was really coming out of the capital improvement fund.
Sure.
That's as I remember it. And until we get into the actual ordinance, or the actual policy, I'll shut my mouth. Thank you.
Other discussion?
One more question on this, and we'll stop beating this dead horse. To Carl's point, the 72% we're at now, there was a variety of reasons why we're there, right? Investments have improved. Can we break down from last year to this year? We went from, I'll just make up the number, 55 to 72. How did we get to that difference? Was it, 6 million was in investments and some more was employees? Is there a way to get to that number in a little more detail? That might be helpful.
Sure.
I would say some of it has to do with what we've already talked about, property increase and compensation.
Yeah, I'll mention that. I know that when the auditor was here last time, they mentioned that it was the two major factors had been a significant increase in the investment revenue.
Right.
And then there was to Mayor Pro Tem's point, there was a lot of leftover personnel funds as well. And those two things coupled together was the majority of it. And there's all of the small stuff.
Other discussion?
Can I talk about the actual policy?
Is that where we're going next? Policy? Okay.
You have a presentation or you want me to talk?
Nope, I'm ready.
All right, on the policy, okay? I have, see, which of my red lines? There's a reason why we're using 45%. Now, why isn't it 40%? Okay, so that's a question. Why is it so high?
Yeah, I'll jump into that one real quick. So a couple of reasons that I would recommend 45%. And first of all, I'll caveat all of this with these numbers are our recommendations. The council can do whatever the council feels is prudent for the financials components of the town. Okay, 45%. Why that one? A couple of reasons. Number one is that we are very reliant on residential property taxes. Okay, so we don't have a real big distribution of property taxes, commercial. We don't have a real large sales tax base. We do decent there, but we don't have a real large sales tax base here in the town. Because we are so dependent on that one revenue source for our major source of revenue here in the town, right? If something happens in the housing market, we need to be ready for those days. It will impact us more than it would impact some other places that have a more diversified revenue stream than us. That's one important part of it. Another one is that we don't have a rainy day fund, something that we might want to consider in the future. Okay, a rainy day fund is a fund that you would set aside for a future catastrophe, a disaster of some sort. Let's say we have a disaster come through and all of a sudden you need $2 million quickly to clean up a park, rebuild some roadways, and do things like that. Right? And especially nowadays, in that the disaster declarations for FEMA and things like that grow and grow and grow and are harder to reach. The reality is you just don't get reimbursed the way that you used to in the past for disasters that come across. Those funds have to come from someplace, all right? And so they would most likely come from your rainy day fund or your reserves. Okay, so in this case, we don't have a rainy day fund, so I would say we need to be kind of on that higher end of that. Third reason is that when it comes to bond ratings, okay, so a bond rating is, a better bond rating means you can borrow money at less interest rate. Okay, so it's cheaper for us to borrow, and we do a lot of borrowing to do some of our major projects here. And that a few basis points can make a big difference in the amount of money that you'll pay over time, especially when you're borrowing, let's say it's $5 or $10 million at a time. Okay. When you are rated for that, going back to the whole unassigned general fund reserves, one of the key measures of your bond rating is going to be what is that number related to your general fund expenditures, right? They're going to look at its percentage, and that's how that's going to be one of the major criteria they use to rate you on that. If that number for us is dropping down and we don't have a rainy day fund and things like that, then they're going to pull us down the scale because they're comparing us with other communities that are AA+, AAA type of communities. And they're going to say those cities, those towns have close to 50% reserves. And that's kind of you see that a little bit more commonly among the top-rated cities and municipalities. It's around that 50% number. So if we're staying around there, that bond rating-wise, we're going to be in pretty good shape, assuming everything else is in order.
Okay, thank you. The next thing I've got is pretty much nitty-gritty terminology. In section 3, you start out with saying that the town's going to strive to maintain. Then all of a sudden you say that the target shall be. So you're going from strive to shall. And then later on, the reserves may be. So you've got 3 terminologies that I kind of, and where my mind's coming from is, April, we've worked together, and by the way, I was going to ask these questions. So, and come up with this. And Brandon, I have confidence in your financing and stuff like that. But at the same time, I'm trying to think of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road, somebody's reading this. And the word shall really comes into play. And we've done this as a council in other issues. So I need those to be, if it's a target, label it a target. Okay? Take the word shall out. If it's going to have to be that way, then put shall back in. Do you follow where my mind's going? Yes. So I'm asking you for review those questions. Thank you.
And I would agree with that. It's consistent, and in the future, people won't be questioning it either.
Yep.
Thank you, Dennis. Others, comments, anybody? Is that all you have on the policy? Oh, my goodness.
Well, they've answered all my other questions, and I can't ask them anymore.
I asked two, let the record reflect, I asked 2 of Dennis's questions.
Oh, yeah. Are there other questions? Anyone? You're good? Everybody good? Everybody good? Brandon, anything else you want to say?
Just wanted to double check any other, obviously the percentage, the percentages that are listed in the policy are among the most important items on there, right? Any other feedback that we would have relative to those percentages on it that we need to take into consideration?
You mean percentages of 30, 45, 50?
Correct, yep. And again, this is the beautiful thing about policies, right? You get into this thing, and a year or 2 from now, we think to ourselves, you know what? We need to take a second look at these numbers and figure out a different plan. The council can always update the policy at that point as well. Okay.
May I thank the staff in putting this policies, and all the policies are on the Facebook, or excuse me, on our website. So once again, transparency, any of the citizens can go look at these policies. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
just one more thing before I'm off, and I apologize for calling it an ordinance. I'm so used to us writing ordinances. But the policy, I do agree with the shall, because as Dean can tell you, shall does have a legal ramification. And it is important that we do have targets and that we will try to meet those targets. But shall makes it an imperative, so we don't want to do that. But I do love the policy. I do like the 30 to 45. It was explained to me by you, Brandon, that in order to keep the bond ratings where we want them, we do need to bump it up and keep it closer to that 45, if that's what I'm understanding. Where the 30 is not something that's set by the state, but a recommended base or base to that number.
Yeah, a recommended minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Other comments? I have a comment. April, thank you very much. Very nice presentation. Appreciate your preparation and your clear explanations. Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
so much.
Thank you, April, great job.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Adjourn 6:44, convene at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock, I will call to a regular meeting, the order to the regular meeting, starting at 7 o'clock, April the 8th, 2024, the day of the eclipse. I hope everyone saw the eclipse. And we do have a quorum. I would like for us to stand, and Chase Ellis will provide the invocation, and Councilman Carl Munger will do the pledges.
Our Heavenly Father, we come before Thee this night to give Thee thanks for assembling as staff, community, mayor, and council to be able to make decisions on bettering our community and the town that we live in. We give Thee thanks for this springtime and for the renewed beauty that comes in spring with the flowers, and we give Thee thanks for being able to witness heavenly marvels as the eclipse today and being able to experience this all with our town. We give Thee thanks for our mayor and our council and all of the civil servants that tirelessly serve our community. As we meet for the betterment of our community tonight, we ask that Thy Spirit be with the mayor and the council and generously give them wise and discerning hearts to make decisions on behalf of our town. Lastly, we give Thee thanks for the men and women that serve our country and ask that You bless them with love and safety. And we ask for Your protection over them as well as our first responders. This is our humble prayer in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Are there any public comments, Tammy?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. So we'll go to the community spotlight, and we will have a proclamation for Patriots Day. And Dennis will present that.
Town of Trophy Club.
Wait a minute, does Scott need to be up here? I'm sorry.
No, not yet.
Okay,
Not yet.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
He has to wait until I make mistakes in reading
Okay.
this. Town of Trophy Club, Office of the Mayor, proclamation. Whereas April 19th marks the date in 1775 when the towns of Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts were marched upon by British soldiers on a mission to confiscate the American arsenal at Concord and capture Patriot leaders at Lexington. And whereas on April 18th and April 19th, 1775, Paul Revere and Samuel Prescott rode with William Dawes to spread the alarm for the country folk to be up into the arm. And whereas the resulting first battle of the American Revolution saw the Redcoats outnumbered and outfought by the Patriots and now is celebrated as Patriots Day. And whereas Patriots Day serves to remind citizens of our revolution and the sacrifices endured during the years of struggle for American independence by patriots such as William Dawes. And whereas we pay tribute to those patriots who first fell on the battlefield of the American Revolution and the struggle for American independence. Now, therefore, Jeanette Tiffany, Mayor of the town of Trophy Club, Texas, on behalf of the town of Trophy Club Town Council, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 19th, 2024 as Patriots Day in the town of Trophy Club, and urge all citizens to become more knowledgeable of the role which the Revolutionary War played in establishing the United States of America. Proclaimed and signed on this 8th day of April 2024, Jeanette Tiffany.
Thank you.
Scott Smith is a son of the American Patriots, and he's a member there, and he will be accepting this proclamation. Scott, would you meet me? Mayor, do you want to go up?
I'm curious how many sons or daughters of the American Revolution are present? I'm the only other one? Yeah,
And what if I may?
I'm not in uniform. Yeah, my great to the sixth grandfather,
come on.
Morgan Throckmorton.
Mayor, may I just say a few words? Okay. I want to thank you, Mayor, and the council, and especially Councilman Sheridan here so eloquently. He read that proclamation, and and I would like to accept it on the behalf of my patriot ancestor, who is Conrad Seipel. He was a lieutenant in the Philadelphia militia, and he fought at the Battle of Brandywine. And again, too, like Dennis had said, I'm a member of Sons of American Revolution, Denton chapter. So again, appreciate this town very much. And it is so important. Our history has been maligned very much in the last few years. And it's so important that we remember what was done so that we can have meetings like this and we can do exactly what we're doing here in the town of Trophy Club. So again, thank you all very much. Thanks.
Need to remember. All right.
I'm not active, though. I probably should be.
Okay.
You want to hear?
Oh, okay, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, no, thank you all. Thank you. We've got a meeting now. Okay.
You got to have the Monday night free, so.
Okay.
Are there any council members who would like to speak as to what you would like to say to the people of your town? Anyone?
It was fun, you know,
It was fun.
out at Harmony Park and other places, watching the, all the folks around with their glasses on and having a good time. It was a fun day.
Yeah, we were out at Harmony Park, actually, and a number of families came out with their children and their picnic lunches, and someone got my sandwich. I don't know what happened to it. And I came back and it was gone. I guess the birds. Anybody?
Carl, the veterans meet.
This Saturday, Metroport Veteran Association meets at Meet You Anywhere at 9 a.m. Zach Sabalos is going to tell his story, Marine Corps veteran.
Who is?
Zach Sabalos.
Is he a local trophy club?
He is not a local trophy club, but he works with me in Gallup.
Oh, good. Others? Well, I always take this opportunity, so here it goes. I'm looking forward to the future of Trophy Club, in particular the next 18 months or 20 months. And we have a lot of very significant planning going to start occurring through our strategic planning. It's whether it has to do with our traffic decisions, park decisions, the future of our town, and what we need are our citizens to respond and become a part of what we're going to be asking for. We're going to be asking for focus groups. We're going to be putting a lot of focus groups out, a lot of surveys, engaging our people in the decisions we're making. And it's pretty daunting when I see the town manager give me this list regarding a particular strategic planning, for instance. He has it broken down into about 4 segments. First segment is done. The second segment is all about community input. If we don't get community input, we don't go to this next section, I don't think. So I'm just telling you that community input is so important. And therefore, you probably know, I sell Trophy Club alerts all the time. And I'm hoping others will, because it's through the TC alerts that we're going to be able to connect with the people to get them to say, I'm coming. I'm going to sign up. And if we don't get people to sign up and get participation, it's going to be a real hard road for the council. And then decisions will be made and community will say, how'd that happen? Well, you didn't step up, you didn't help us. So I'm going to be really preaching this from now until 2 years from now, I guess. So get engaged, and it's your opportunity to spread it out within your neighborhood because we need you. That's the bottom line. We will be more successful with you than we ever will without you. So if you will, become a part of it. Thank you. That's my message today. Is that good enough? Does that speak for the council? Hope so. Okay. Next, we have an update from the town manager.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. A few updates for you. First of all, just as a quiz for you or for anyone else in the room, does anyone know how many years that we have been designated as a Tree City USA?
Pin. 24.
All right, well, the answer is 20. Actually, I have a plaque that's been sitting here right next to me, staring me in the face. So I knew the number for that, but we recently received word that we've been recognized now for the 20th consecutive year as a Tree City USA. Congratulations to our town council, our parks department, and all the staff who have a commitment, obviously, to a vibrant green environment here in Trophy Club. There are 4 key requirements that are required for the Tree City USA designation. You have to have establishing a tree board or department, right? You have to enact a tree care ordinance. You have to allocate an annual community forestry budget of at least $2 per capita, and you have to actively participate in Arbor Day observances and proclamations on that. And so I just want to congratulate everyone on receiving our 20th year of recognition as a Tree City USA. A lot of cities, particularly in Texas, desire to be a Tree City USA. We've been doing it now for 20 years here in Trophy Club, so congratulations to everyone on that.
Excellent.
Brandon,
Yes.
The Rotary Club, and I forget the date, one of the meetings, we're going to plant a tree for Arbor Day.
That is correct. Yep. Yeah. So it's actually, I think it's on Arbor Day, which is April. Yes. April 27th is the date for where the Rotary will be participating in planting a tree or a few trees here in Trophy Club. So.
And I'm not sure, Chase, you're in the room, but he and I had a note request from a scout. Did that go forward that wanted to plant a tree in Trophy Club? Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So that project is moving forward. But
Oh, okay, good.
I
Yeah,
believe that's part of an Eagle Scout, right?
Yes.
Project. Yeah, it's an Eagle Scout project.
yeah. Oh, right down the street from you.
There we go. Exactly. Nice and close. I'll walk to it.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Always a few more boards and commission meetings. We have a few meetings that are coming up over the next few weeks. Keep these on your calendar. First of all, on April 10th, we have our Crime Control and Prevention District meeting. That'll be here at 6 o'clock in the community conference room. On April 15th, we have the Arts and Culture Ad Hoc Committee. That's also at 6 o'clock, also in the community conference room. On April 15th, we also have double meetings that night, Parks and Recreation Board meeting at 6 o'clock here in council chambers. And on April 18th, we have our Economic Development Corporation meeting at 6 o'clock here in council chambers as well. So as always, we invite the public and anyone who would like to attend those meetings to come on out for those. The first movie in the park that we had was an excellent night, a lot of fun, a little windy that night, but everything was doing okay. We have our second movie in the park coming up here soon. That is on April 19th, and it starts at 8:15 p.m. And we are going to be also at Harmony Park, same location, and we'll be watching the movie Wonka. So please bring your lawn chairs, your blankets, and your families to come out and enjoy a movie night under the stars. And then also, last is that I've been asked a series of questions, so I just want to make sure that everyone knows there is a candidate forum that has been planned for it. It's not being conducted by the town. I just want to make sure that that part is clear because I've gotten a lot of questions. Is the town conducting a candidate forum? The answer is no, we are not. We actually are prohibited from doing things like that with public funds, but there is one going on. It is on April 11th. At 6 p.m. at Barra Church, but it has no affiliation with the town or any of the staff of the town. And that is all that I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. A quick civic tip.
All right.
A quick
Very quick. So you have 3 items on your agenda for interlocal cooperation agreements. So I just want to kind of explain, we thought it would be a good idea, explain to the public what those are. So sometimes what you'll see is you'll see mutual aid agreements. You might even see a cooperative agreement. It's different than a interlocal cooperation agreement, different chapters of state law, but all of these different types of agreements are designed to provide municipalities and also county and state agencies and even the federal government to work together to improve effectiveness and efficiency. So this is found in Chapter 791 of the Texas Local Government Code, and it says this, it's called the Interlocal Cooperation Act. The purpose of this chapter is to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of local governments by authorizing them to contract to the greatest extent to the greatest possible extent with one another and with agencies of the state. In 2011, there was actually an amendment to the Texas Constitution to further that effectiveness. And what it did was it opened up the ability for the state to enact laws that would add to this chapter so that you wouldn't have to create a sinking fund. And this goes to the financial policies that you heard tonight, so that all these governmental agencies, entities, when they're working together, aren't creating unconstitutional debt. So what they did was they authorized an amendment to Chapter 791 after they passed the constitutional amendment that allowed you to have interlocal agreements that go beyond 1 year. So that was the big change that they made to increase this effectiveness. So that's what all these agreements are designed to do.
Thank you.
Dean, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we have an idea of how many ILAs that we participate in currently?
I don't know. I bet we could search that. There would be a lot, yeah.
Many.
Oh, yeah,
It'd be a nice thing to know.
yeah.
Good question. Thank you. We're ready for consent agenda.
Consent agenda, item 4, consider approval of the March 25th, 2024 Town Council regular meeting minutes.
Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda, item number 4.
Is there a second?
Second.
Jeff seconds. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Passed. Thank you. You will notice that we are moving agenda item 8 up next. So that's what we'll be doing, and you would like to read that, Tammy?
Consider an ordinance authorizing the sale and conveyance of approximately 0.05 acres of real property owned by the town of Trophy Club in the amount of $3,444 located in the Rosalinda Allen Survey, abstract number 17, along the northwest line of 2643 Highlands Court, Trophy Club, Denton County, Texas, and authorizing the town manager to execute all documents to complete the transaction.
So we'll have Matt Cox. Thank you.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Council. Before I get started, I wanted to just give you a quick history on before. So, Mr. Gardner, when I got hired, within probably the first couple months, I'm going on almost 3 years now, he reached out to me, came up, introduced himself, kind of told me this is what's going on. Over the next couple months, he had sent me some emails. So when you look up in the dictionary the word patient, it's going to have this man's picture.
He is in the room.
He is in the room. I did not tell him I was going to say that, but these emails go back to 2017, previous town managers. And so I was awfully excited about a month ago to let him know that we're moving forward with this. A lot of his emails would say, hey, I hadn't talked to you. Hope you had a great holidays. And then the next one was, hope you enjoyed your summer. So these were 6 months between COVID and all of the different, things. So we've got this coming now. So he's at 2643 Highlands Court. If you just go up Highlands Court, it's basically dead ends. And if you also notice, we've got Willow Estates that also kind of delayed the process a little bit, because once those started coming in, he and I discussed that we really needed to get engineering, civils, those kind of things done prior to. So there's a small parcel of just open space behind his property. There's 2,296 square feet. And that was not a misprint. It is 0.05 acres. You'll notice in that, let's see if my cursor, so that's the MUD's lift station. So we've reached out to the MUD. We've got, he's done all of the legwork, as in Mr. Gardner, paid for a survey. We've met with the MUD. Mr. Allen has looked at that and said, that line is perfectly acceptable. They've got a maintenance area around that, so they said if it was further than 10 feet or no closer than 10 feet to their existing fence, then they were good with it as well. The Texas Local Government Code, Section 272.001B, does authorize the town to sell the land of Mr. Gardner at a fair market value without publication or bidding. The request of the parcel is separated from the main open space parcel by a new road, which is going to be Rose Drive, which will go into the Willow Estates. And the town will save money on mowing and maintenance expenses and things like that. It's just basically cut off. The subject property has gone through the MUD and does have, they are satisfied with the survey. The resident also reached out and got an appraisal. The appraisers that we use through TMP for residential or commercial, he used one of the approved appraisers that we have for residential appraisals, and that came back to $3,444. Our town attorney has assisted with a special warranty deed and with the ordinance. So if y'all have any questions, the applicant is also here, and I'm here for any other questions y'all may have.
Questions?
Matt, at one time, we did quite a few parcel transfers like this prior to your arrival, I believe.
Yes, sir.
How does that affect the green space agreements that we had in place?
These are open and not parkland dedication.
Okay.
So, and again, Mr. Gardner and I, we discussed, we don't know why, other than just possibly personnel change, why it just stopped with him, because his neighbor did receive that property. And so anyway, here we are.
Okay, so are we ready for a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion.
What? Look,
Oh, sorry.
I was going to make a comment.
Okay.
Typically, to your not understanding why it happened before, typically a municipality looks at their surplus property, and depending on the size or the location, once a year, the town manager is going to make recommendations to the council on what to do with that surplus property. You've got two types of property. You've got those that you acquire for roadways, easement, et cetera, and then you have those that are disposition that can be made under the code at certain values, and as you mentioned, green space, where if it had been parkland dedication, it would have required a completely different type of vetting and much more difficult process. So I think that the prior deeds by the prior mayors into the neighbors were done outside of code in error. I'm glad to see that we finally got that straight and that we've set a precedent here today by doing it the right way. That was all.
thank you. Motion, Dennis?
Make a motion that we approve the ordinance authorizing the sale and conveyance of the property and authorize the town manager to execute all documents to complete the transaction.
There's a second?
Second.
Carl Munger seconds. Is there further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed?
Thank you, Matt, for doing it
Motion
right.
passes.
Doing it right.
Thank you for acquiring our land and making it beautiful. Yes, yes. So what are we going to do with that $3,000?
General fund.
We'll put it in unassigned fund balance.
Goes to reserve, yeah, reserve.
Unallocated fund balance.
72.03%.
Oh, shoot. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And what we're going to do is pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, I would like to convene into executive session to consult with the town attorney regarding 5, 6, and 7 item, and it is 7:25, and we will, and that's it, 25. 7:55, and we are reconvening into open session. And there is no action from executive session. Now, I'm understanding we need to go through these for each motion, correct? You want to read the motion, please, Tammy?
Item 5, consider an interlocal cooperation agreement with Denton County for fire protection services and authorize the town manager to negotiate and execute the agreement on behalf of the town.
And is there a motion?
I move to approve item number 5.
Okay, is there a second? Dennis seconds. Any discussion? Those approved? Disapprove? Motion passes. Item 6.
Consider an interlocal cooperation agreement between the town of Trophy Club and Denton County for ambulance services and authorize the town manager to negotiate and execute the agreement on behalf of the town.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve item number 6 as read.
Stacy seconds. Those discussion? Those in favor? Those opposed? Motion passes. Item 7.
Consider a fire arson task force interlocal agreement through the Denton County Fire Marshal's Office and authorize the town manager to negotiate and execute the agreement on behalf of the town.
Move to approve item number 7 as read.
Is there a second?
Second.
Jeff seconds. Discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? Motion passes. Do we have,
Motion to adjourn.
before we do that, Chief Wise, we just saved you some time. Thank you. Okay, a motion to adjourn, Jeff, second, somebody? Second. Stacy seconds. 7:57, around here.
At our,
No.